Is Ice Cube still true to the game?
I think hip hop will always be a voice for the people.
Yo,
Reggie Williams, what's going on, man?
what's going on, man?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm good. How about you?
Oh man, I can't complain. I like the new backdrop.
Yeah, why you all in my business, man? Speaking of backdrop, it looks like you got Betty Boop and somebody else fighting back there. What's going on?
All right, it's early.
No, shots fired straight out the bar, man.
I'm gonna remember it. Nah, that's a vintage Philly public transportation warning, and it looks like a girl's pushing another girl onto a track, which I just love.
Oh wow,
It was
that's
a
crazy.
gift, so I'm gonna have it framed. Yeah.
That's straight to House of Cards.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah. Well, yo, I'm Reggie Williams, founder and CEO of Ambrosia for Heads, and with me I have Jake Payne, our editor in chief. Man, it's always good. Last week was kind of lively in an unexpected way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Uh,
this week will be no exception too. There's a lot. I mean, we're at that, fourth quarter. Things get exciting.
yeah, so let's kick it off, man, with what started the week. Ice Cube, who I will say is, I got my favorite MCs, right? And unlike, I don't replace them, but like, I had favorite MCs in certain eras. And so first was Melly Mel, then I went to LL, and Cube was my third favorite MC.
Like what era? Like NWA era or solo era?
No solo era. I loved, I liked him in NWA, and America's Most Wanted was cool. But what really kicked it off for me was Death Certificate. When Death Certificate came out, actually it was Halloween, I believe, of
Hmm.
1980, 1990, maybe.
I think 91, if I'm not
91,
mistaken.
91, yeah, 91. And that album changed everything for me. One of my favorite songs on the album, well, Bird in the Hand was one, for sure. But one of my favorite songs was True to the Game. Outstanding sample from Gap Band. And it's all about Cube talking about like no matter what, he wasn't going to change. He wasn't going to like desert his people. And he's really talking about people who like get too big for their own culture. Um, so he talks about like you know getting a white woman on your elbow and like moving out of the neighborhood and things like that. And it was really kind of an anthem, like an empowerment anthem for kids in my generation at the time. And Ice Cube and I are peers. I think we're maybe a year apart or so. So it was with kind of pretty wild, great consternation that for a lot of folks that Ice Cube, there was a tweet that was sent out that suggested that Ice Cube might be supporting Donald Trump. Now, um, you know, I'm very, very dubious of anything, from the news right now, and especially something that is from Twitter.
Yeah.
But this was from Trump's senior advisor, Katrina Pearson. The tweet said, uh, shout out to, let's see, shout out to Ice Cube. And it said, for his willingness to step up and work with President Trump. And said, working with his administration, it said, leaders gonna lead, haters gonna hate. Thank you for leading with a fist, and the fist looks brown. Like I mean, almost like so. First of all, leaders gonna lead, haters gonna hate.
Yeah.
Coming from a representative of the Trump administration, right off the bat, that's suspect, right? Like I mean, why are you going to talk in a colloquial way that is designed to appeal to black people or people in hip hop when clearly you're not really affiliated or down with the culture? That's
Yeah.
one, right? Two, the whole thing seemed like a setup. I doubt that Q, even if he was working with them, and we'll get into that in a second, expected them to put him on blast like that. I'm sure he knows. He's a savvy dude. He knows that any kind of work or affiliation is going to be used to their advantage. But I'm sure he didn't expect a tweet like that. So it comes out that Cube, who's got his contract with Black America plan, um, put out inquiries both to the Biden campaign and to Trump to see how they might be able to work together to put forth his agenda advancing causes for Black people. And apparently Biden said, yeah, yeah, sure, sure, we'll get back to you, after the
After the
election.
election. Yeah.
After the election, right? And Trump said, yeah, let's get to work. Let's roll up our sleeves. Like, let's see what we can get done. Now, the thing about it is, we all know that politicians lie and make false promises, all of them, and everyone focuses so much on how much Donald Trump lies, but all politicians lie. He just does it like at an
Unapologetic way.
exaggerated basis, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
and unapologetic for sure, and explicit, and like, from second to second. But all of them make promises that they can't keep. So whether or not Trump would actually keep his promises is a different story. But Ice Cube went in, and apparently for the last couple of months has been talking to them. And Trump has rolled out recently what he calls his Platinum Plan, which addresses the concerns of African Americans. And supposedly, part of his Platinum Plan actually borrows things from Ice Cube's contract with Black America. So, it comes out that Cube has been working with Donald Trump, and much like what happened with Van Jones, when he, reached across the aisle and worked with Donald Trump on criminal justice reform, and actually got, a bill passed. It was one of the most, New York Times called it one of the most historic bills for Black people in a generation. He got a lot of criticism. So I want to unpack this on a lot of levels. So this is going to be an extended conversation, and I'm not sure where you fall on this, but first of all, where do you fall on this?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that you said. I'm sure there's a lot of smoke and mirrors here. According to Politico, Ice Cube had met in person extensively, with Jared Kushner. I mean, it was more than just like a handshake and a photo op, which is one of, Trump's family members and advisors to get this off. Yeah, I mean, that tweet doesn't look good. I even think the name Platinum Plan is a little bit pandering, I would imagine.
A tad, yeah.
Yeah. And I watched the video that Cube had put out, I think, before kind of the damage control of this, which is really, he wanted to put him, am I correct, in $500 billion? Is that the number?
Something like that, yeah. Yep.
Of capital into the Black community. And Cube said, look, there's been bailouts. Historically, there's even been bailouts. Not, they weren't using that language back then, but there have been tax breaks and rewards for being white. We've seen what happened in the auto industry. We've seen what's happened, with PPA loans and things like that. Like, I want to make sure these funds go directly to Black folks. So yeah, I mean, at face value right there, I look at it and I say, you know what? I don't fault Cube for trying to make things happen. Yes, in the eyes of many, he's dancing with the devil. But at that point right there, I see no reason to cancel Ice Cube or anything like that. That's me.
Well, okay. There's been a very, people become very black and white in their approach to looking at things like this. Either you have to hate Trump, or else you're 100% down with Trump, right?
Yeah.
There's no nuance. There's no gray area. But the fact is that the dude is the president of the United States right now, and and if he were to be reelected, which is still a very huge question, we won't know in 2 weeks. We probably won't know for 6 weeks.
Right.
He's going to be in power for another 4 years, and we can either choose to just let that 4 years be a wash and get nothing, or we can choose to try and get something from the dude. And he's shown, with the work he's done with Kim Kardashian, the work he did with Van Jones, that he is willing to do some things, right?
And he's willing to do it, especially, not to interrupt you, but the way to Trump's heart is fame.
Right.
I mean, this is a reality TV star turned, president. And in recent weeks, with the New York Times reports of his, $700, tax what he paid. They said that most of Trump's money over the last 15 years has come from reality TV and then using that to license his name to various things. So Cube might be able to go in there in a way that others can't, just simply based on his profile. And, let's be real. I mean, Trump, and I think that's why we get the tweet from the woman you mentioned, is like they are looking, if any person of color is going to come in and shake Trump's hand or strike a deal, they're going to take that and run with it to the nth degree. And that wasn't from Cube. That was from, inside the Oval Office and, his advisors.
Yeah. So, you hear a lot of criticism of Cube, but, one of my questions was why did the Biden campaign not meet with him? What do you think the rationale? I don't understand what the rationale was of that. He's definitely a dude who's got a lot of influence. Successful artist, successful filmmaker, entrepreneur.
I thought about that. It's funny, and I think that Joe Biden and his campaign right now are really walking on eggshells. I think the biggest liability to Joe Biden is himself, and I say that, as a registered Democrat and as somebody who in this election, endorses, Biden and Harris. But I feel like that's a reason why, apart from, last week's town hall meeting, you don't see ever since, Biden made that comment to Charlemagne, they've turned the fader on him a lot because he can say the wrong thing. And I also thought about it too. I mean, I think back in the last decade or last 12, 13 years, think about it when, Ludacris and Common had made connections to the White House, or even Jay-Z. Bill O'Reilly and Fox News had a field day. And we as hip hop heads can laugh and say, really, you guys had a problem with Common? And now, you have Ice Cube, and whether you want to go back to lyrics, or you even want to go back to controversies that, Cube has been in this year regarding potentially anti-Semitic tweets and things like that. I think the Biden campaign owed Ice Cube a far better answer than hurry up and wait. But I feel like they feared that this would be run with in a whole different way than it's being run with now that Cube got his conversation with Jared Kushner.
Yeah, so another criticism that came out is that President Trump seems to give time and platforms to artists, particularly in the hip hop community, but doesn't give the same kind of time and ear to Black businessmen, Black politicians, Black activists. So what do you think about that? First of all, I guess I'll step back and say, okay, uh, you know, hip hop in a lot of ways drives Black business, Black entrepreneurship. It is definitely an activist platform. And so while it might not be like a DeRay McKesson or, a traditional kind of activist type stance, there are a lot of hip hop artists who've been very outspoken and who've really kind of pushed narratives. Killer Mike is obviously one. Megan Thee Stallion, who we'll talk about, has stepped into that forum. Cardi B has done so. Kendrick, goes on and on. So, is it even a valid criticism to question why he would meet with hip hop artists?
Hugely. I mean, and that's a frustration. If you let fame always cut in the front of the line for the photo op or for the optics of it, that's a poor leader. And, even down to, and Cube talked about this himself, like the PPA loans that were offered to businesses, third party investigations revealed how biased those were. Lots of businesses of color, not just Black owned businesses, were getting passed over. Well, Ruth's Chris and other major conglomerates that were never designed to receive this money got to the front of the line. Now you can argue, is Cube, leveraging his fame to make it happen for other people? That remains to be seen. And I've yet to read a report of this platinum plan, how much of it they took from, the contract with Black America that Cube initially drafted. I'll be very curious to see what specific things came out of it. Because if it's just fine print and they're just using this, that's a damn shame. And if that's the case, then Cube should come out and call it what it is.
Yeah, I've never been an or person. I'm always and I think that the question isn't should it be hip hop artists or activists, entrepreneurs, politicians. It can be and.
Yeah.
And so I certainly don't fault Cube and other artists who leverage that platform to get access. But obviously, I do think the president should afford the same kind of time and energy to other people as well.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And sure, Jay-Z had the lyric of Obama on the text. And I mean, we remember in the final days of the Obama presidency, him having that, I forget what the initiative was called, but when you had Rhapsody and J. Cole and DJ Khaled and Rick Ross and Pusha T and all of these folks going to the
My
White
brother's
House.
keeper.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you. I mean, I truly believe that in a post 2000 world, in a post George W. Bush world, you are not going to see a president that is not working with the hip hop community, because there's just far too much at stake. And even, the pre-roll ads I'm getting on my phone, to vote or to vote for either candidate are so, pandering and aimed at the hip hop generation.
Yeah, I mean, celebrity endorsement is like a tried and true thing that all politicians use, or used to have for several decades. You remember Bill Clinton going on
Arsenio
Arsenio and playing saxophone, and
with the
you
shades
know,
on.
yeah, I know exactly right. Like nowadays, that would be criticized as like him, being pandering,
Yeah.
and he was, So yeah, so okay, so Cube does that. Can Ice Cube is Ice Cube still true to the game?
Well, I
That's the
mean,
question.
let me ask you though, because I mean, you're asking me, and quite obviously, I'm not a person of color. I hold Ice Cube in the highest regard, but as somebody who considered him your voice or your goat for a time in your hip hop journey, what does this mean to you, Reggie?
I think back to another Cube line.
Never have dinner with the president?
No, another one. Here I am drinking straight out the 8 bottle. Do I look like a MF and role model to all kids looking up to me? Life ain't nothing but, you know, Cube has never ever allowed himself to be put in one box.
Mhm.
He is, you know, he has always been someone who is looking to advance his cause, whatever it might be. I have no doubt that his cause is Black people. Like he is truly trying to make things better for Black people. You look at his music has been activists like that. You look at the films that he made. It's usually Black directors. He made a lot of Black comics careers, from Chris
Yeah.
Tucker to Mike Epps to whoever it might be. A lot of his management, Pat Charbonnet was a Black woman, although Jeff Quatnitz is, and that's how he actually got to Jared Kushner, is white. He's done business with a lot of Black folks and helped people, F. Gary Gray with Friday. Like his agenda has always been, in my mind, advancing the cause for Black people. And so if he can do so, if you can get something good out of something that's otherwise, bad scenario, then I definitely would opt for that. And if it puts pressure on Democrats to be more honest and not take for granted like our vote and be pandering, then yeah, 100%. I try and look at it a bit more nuanced. I don't see it like I said as either or. I think he's still true to the game for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you and I are saying the same thing. And it was interesting. You showed me Ebro Darden's take, and Ebro had made the point, if I'm paraphrasing correctly, that he was frustrated with Cuba, disappointed, I should say, because this steps in front of a lot of grassroots activists that are treating this president or holding him accountable for the lives and the disparities that he stood behind, and outright hate, which we saw with Charlottesville and, more recently when he was taken to task during the debate. Do you see any merit there to that
Yeah,
point?
it's kind of the point we're making earlier, and I don't think it's right for the president to only give platforms to famous people, and it's not just color. Like he did the same for Kim Kardashian and other people. But that's how he is, and we know that.
Yeah.
Does that mean that we should not take opportunities where we can get them?
Yeah.
And it would be great. My preference would be for Ice Cube to and others to kind of leverage their access and either help to work with the activists that are grassroots and get bullet points from their agenda and present them as part of their platform, and I suspect that Cube did so with his contract with Black America. I highly doubt that he just came up with stuff on his own. I'm sure he had a team of people that were, had their ear to the streets and knew what was going on. But then, secondly, if they could actually, bring people with them,
Yeah.
it's no different than like, putting up and coming artists on an album. Like, bring someone with you, give them a feature spot, give them a guest verse, let them get access to, that I think would be cool. But who
Yeah.
knows? Who knows what he's tried to do?
Yeah, and I'll just say this too is in a 3-minute Twitter video, I saw I saw a person who felt more informed to me in Cube than a lot of what we've gotten from Kanye and his standing behind this presidency. Like,
Absolutely.
and that's key. Is it's one thing to try to make a deal, and it's just like breaking the lines on a strike. There's a lot of people that are like, damn, but Cube's, I guess, in his mind saying, well, we got to get to work whether this guy wins or he doesn't. We've got to put food on the table, versus Kanye, who put on the hat, made really damning comments on TMZ, and has yet to really come and give substantial reason for why he feels the way he does.
Yeah. So going back to that question about whether or not Cube is true to the game, should artists be held to statements they made 30 years ago?
I think especially, I mean, we're seeing this. We're living in the 444 era. We're watching artists evolve in real time. And when I say artists, the artists that have changed their lives, which Cube certainly falls under. Yeah, I mean, I think you're allowed, and hip hop is full of contradictions. I mean, the artist that I've always held in the highest regard is Tupac. And come on, I mean, that guy is that's keep your head up, but also, convicted of, crimes against women. You look at Dre on Straight Outta Compton, I don't smoke weed or cess. Boom, 3.5 years later, The Chronic.
Right.
So artists evolve, they change. Talib Kweli went from Reflection Eternal to, 13 years later doing swapping collabs with Nelly. You would have never told me in a million years that would have happened. And I know these are artistic things versus much bigger decisions, but yes, to answer your question, I 100% believe artists are allowed to evolve so long as they stand behind it and they can justify it. Because I know I'm not the person I was 20 years ago.
Yeah, it almost, it's very much like cancel culture, right? Like people pulling up tweets from 10 years ago to use against a person. People evolve, people change. Even, as you're alluding to with Tupac, like, people aren't the sum of one moment.
Yeah.
They're a collection of several moments. And so to judge people by one thing that they said, it's not like the Constitution. It's not like something that
Yeah.
that you hold to the letter of the law. These are living, breathing people with thoughts that progress.
Absolutely. And I think we all, I love that Jay-Z and Pusha T put that Tommy Loren clip on, Drug Dealers Anonymous, because Homegirl sounded real stupid trying to tell Beyonce that her husband's a drug dealer. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? So yeah, we can't, and when I say ourselves, I mean the hip hop community, we shouldn't do that. I mean, we should hold our leaders accountable, we should hold our artists accountable, but I'm not canceling Ice Cube over this. That's just me. And I'm curious to see what our listeners and viewers think, in the C section, so to speak.
Yeah, let me ask you this. How much of people's reaction do you think is to the tweet and the headlines versus actually going in and seeing and reading and hearing the nuance?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is just what is happening so much, right now, is we are literally consuming the life and death news and information in, 140 characters or less. And yeah, I mean, when I read the Rolling Stone article on this, I wanted to know more. I felt like I wasn't getting enough. Politico had a really interesting breakdown. And not for nothing, I mean, they're holding Cube accountable as well. But yeah, I think that this is a little bit sensationalized at this point.
Yeah, Cube ended up going on a CNN show. It was the Chris Cuomo show, and at first it was on, then like the news broke, and then the show was off, and then Ice Cube called him out on Twitter, and then the show was back on miraculously. and he went on, and then afterwards, apparently Don Lemon attacked him, and so Cube was like, said it was some punk ass, stuff, and like said, he'd definitely be down to see him, like, and mix it up man to man, if he wanted to do it on Monday. So
Yeah.
I have a feeling this is not the last we've heard of Cube, but
No.
I do applaud him for not backing down and coming out with an apology and all, all sort of stuff. He stuck to his guns. He said, "Look, I'm trying to get some stuff done. This is what it is."
Yeah, and I mean, if anyone wants to call Cube a sellout, I'm fascinated by let's just talk hip hop. I mean, you mentioned Death Certificate. I guess it was supposed to be the 25th, but it came out a little bit later than that. Cube in the last 3 years has come out with very jarring videos and songs that confront police brutality. Even in this pandemic, controversial or not, Cube has made very charged up statements about what is going on. So, I mean, this isn't somebody that's, softened their stance over time. And I think kind of to your point, he doesn't have a whole lot to gain. I think he's really leveraging that fame and platform, hopefully for others that are smarter than him and smarter than you and I to go in there and do work, if that's what happens. And
Yeah.
Cube has not said like, yo, I hope that this party wins the election or that this guy is here another 4 years. He's saying, I'm not here to hurry up and wait for Joe Biden.
Yeah. So keeping it on politics, Diddy also came out, and Diddy has been involved for many years. He had his vote campaign back when he ran the marathon. Man, it's probably like 12 years or so ago, maybe 16 at this point. And a few years back, he basically said that black people should hold their vote hostage, and force people to come and get it. But now he's kind of amending that statement, saying it's too important not to vote at this point, but we should like still like hold people accountable and get something for our vote. So he wants to start a new political party. It's called with the Black Political Party. It's very straightforward. The Black Political Party is what it's called.
I think, yeah.
And he wants to work with activists and and local politicians and build this party up. But what do you think about Diddy's move?
Yeah, I mean, I hope there's follow through. And I think Diddy definitely deserves credit, or Puff deserves credit. I hate saying Diddy, even after all these years.
Yeah,
Deserves credit, for getting eyeballs, when he did the marathon. And I can't remember, like you said, if that was 2004 or 2008. There definitely needs to be a conglomerate that politicians need to get the endorsement of. And I don't know that that's what he's talking about. I think, political party, everyone thinks, well, is this going to be an alternative to Democrats and Republicans and Green Party, whatever, libertarians? But no matter what, there's power in numbers. And Diddy, that's a billionaire. So there's definitely power there that he can use. And I think to stack up and hold these candidates accountable as a starting point and eventually move into its own party, I love it. I stand by it. I'll be curious to see where it's at in the next election.
yeah, the Black Party. That's what it's called. Yeah, I agree. Like, I really do hope it's not an alternative party because I don't see that as getting any traction. I just see
Yeah.
it as like throwing votes away and like helping those we don't want in office get in office. But if he is really using it as a block, right? It's almost like a block party instead of a black party, where he gets a substantial portion of the black vote, and we can wield that. That becomes very, very powerful,
Mhm.
and that's something I think would be great to see.
Keeping it on this, you mentioned Killer Mike earlier too, and Cube and Diddy are both making inroads towards outcomes. Killer Mike, who I think in 2015, we spent a lot of time on the site as AFH covering, his movement, which he truly brought change. And you and Mike talked about this not that long ago of banking black. So now Mike has the opportunity. He told the Breakfast Club he's secured a black-owned national bank. It's very much virtual, but I don't know about you. I mean, I'm very rarely, even before this pandemic, in a brick and mortar bank much anymore. Like, so much of that is is done virtually. But how about that, from taking a movement to now having a stake in a bank? That's pretty dope.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. The only reason I used to go to banks until recently was just to deposit checks. But now that you can do that online too, I rarely go to a bank. If I need to
Yeah.
get a new bank card or something like that. Um, I think it is Mike putting his money literally where his mouth is. He called for us to take our money out of the racist capitalist system at the height of the Black Lives Matters movement in 2016, when Philando Castile and Alton Sterling had been killed within a few days of one another. And I'm very much about that.
Yeah.
The protests, the boycotts are great for raising awareness, but to drive true change, you actually got to be capitalistic and use your money to affect change, or withholding your money to do so. And so, if we can continue to capitalize Black businesses that will give loans to Black businesses, or Black banks that will give loans to Black businesses and invest in the community and allow us to circulate our dollar more in the community, then that's phenomenal. And I think in certain communities, Jewish community and others, dollar will circulate as many as 26 times before leaving that community. Whereas I think Mike had a stat, it's like 3 times in the Black community, like 90 minutes or something like
Yeah.
that. Is something
Less than a
insane.
movie.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh.
yeah. It's so anything that can be done to keep wealth within is going to be, in my opinion, the thing that drives change the most in this society. People's goodwill, people's guilty consciences, those come and go.
Yeah.
But learning to build wealth, creating your own wealth, investing wealth in your own community is the real way to drive change, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And I believe in that. And Mike, it's funny too. 13 years ago, some of my friends who happen to be Black were like, yo, don't bank nationally, like have a national bank, go with a big bank, but also have a small town bank, somebody that you see face to face. And Mike was talking about that. And that's one of the things that he's done with his money, because when you go for a loan, they're going to know who you are. But I think that you can say unilaterally as an institution, banks are prejudiced, so to have a Black owned bank that believes in, its people is really important. And absolutely, I tell, I task my white friends, like, make sure you're supporting Black businesses, and brown businesses, and be very mindful where your dollar goes. If you're buying something big, if you're going into a big box store, take a look at that CEO, see where they're giving. Because I know for me, there's certain footwear I won't wear. There's certain, hardware stores, national chains I don't go into, because I know. And so, yeah, it's all part of a bigger discussion that we covered a lot on AFH.
Yeah, going back to that point of and versus or, I love the fact that Mike was saying, you don't have to make this your only bank.
Yeah.
If you don't feel comfortable investing all of your resources in it, keep your more mainstream bank too, but put some money into this bank.
Yeah.
It's called Greenwood.
Yeah.
Named after, the Tulsa, Oklahoma neighborhood, Black Wall Street. Everything about it is uplifting. So going back to that point about like whether or not, it's okay to talk to hip hop, or why is it hip hop artists? It is a reality that hip hop artists have become activists and politicians. We talked about Scarface last week and his health challenges, but he also was running for city councilman in Houston. Bun B, was running, for office. Killer Mike has run for office, and there have been, requests for him to run for governor, or
and he was a key part of Bernie Sanders' campaign in both.
Part of Bernie Sanders' campaign, and speaks as intelligently about policy as any politician I've ever seen. So it's a blurred line. The fact is that we have an entire generation of artists who are becoming, in many ways, our political activists.
Yeah, and I think, Mike's an interesting point, just to bring it full circle too, is, Mike caught hell for that video he made with the NRA.
Yeah.
But I don't think Mike got canceled for that. I think that was a really interesting point to remind everyone, and Mike over the years has said, like, I believe his father was an officer of the law, so Mike has said, I'm not anti-cop, but I'm also, FTP when it comes to this, and this. And I always look up to Mike, and I've told him this, that Mike doesn't fall in line with everything that a party or that a movement expects him to be. You can be an individual. And yeah, I mean, there was a lot of people that were like, really, the NRA? Even LP was like, I don't agree. I agree with my partner Run the Jewels on a lot of things. This isn't one, but they still work together. And out of it, you know, we didn't cancel Mike over it. And I don't know that the NRA is in a better place because of him making that video.
Yeah, you know, Mike, in our interview that we did with him and several others, he always talks about Noam Chomsky and the fact that people try to um, force people into these bilateral like conventions, like you know, you have to be one way or another way. But reality is that you know we should look at things individually in a nuanced kind of way. And you know, I'm more and more like that. I don't, you know, I don't look at any particular news source because I understand they all have biases. You know, I look at both political parties with scrutiny. You know, and I
Yeah.
think that the more we can do that, the more honest we can keep these folks.
100% agree. So from highbrow, important discussions involving Cube and Killer Mike and Puff Daddy. That might sound weirder than Diddy. I don't know. Puff. We got one more news item to talk about, and this one is a little bit more salacious, involving.
Wait a minute. Before we get to that,
Yeah.
I want to go back to the thing I referenced before, which is still on that political side, right?
Okay.
Not necessarily politics, but very much um, activist for Black women. Megan Thee
Oh,
Stallion.
yeah.
Megan Thee
Excuse me.
Stallion, you know, wrote a very powerful op-ed in the New York Times detailing her incident, not naming names about being shot twice, you know, over the summer, but really kind of calling people, you know, calling people out for um, not protecting Black women, you know. So she endured this, and it's confirmed that she was shot in the foot
Yep.
twice, right, in the feet twice. Like, you know, who did it, you know, but
Remains to
she
be seen. Yeah.
was shot for sure. And she was disbelieved and then ridiculed and then like torn down, you know, and she was the victim of it. So, what was your take after reading this?
Yeah, I mean, it started the week and I thought it was really important. You know, I think Meg the Stallion is a really, you know, we've seen evolution you know, of you know, hip hop artists that happen to be female, and Meg is taking it to a really dope place because she absolutely has the spotlight. But she's bringing a lot of substance with her, and she was doing that before she got shot. And you know, this is just a recurring theme that I tell myself. I think it was James Baldwin that, you know, said that, you know, nothing in society is more overlooked, I'm paraphrasing, than the Black woman. And that was in the late 60s, early 70s. And I can very clearly see that going on today. So to have Meg write a really you know, heartfelt, information-packed New York Times op-ed, front page of the paper, you know, at least online, I just thought it was really important, and I encourage everyone to read it.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back a year ago, would you have thought that the artist who was, you know, the author of like Hot Girl Summer and then Savage and then WAP with Cardi B would also be playing this role? Like, I mean, it goes back to your points about Tupac, right? That, you know, all these people are multidimensional
Yeah.
and, you know, can talk about like, you know, salacious or superficial stuff, but also can have incredible depth and richness. And so, anyone looking to dismiss their opinion based on their artwork should maybe, you know, kind of rethink that.
Yeah, I mean, and Meg can be many things. I mean, she was on SNL, you know, earlier this month, you know, called out Daniel Cameron, the district attorney in Kentucky, you know, over Breonna Taylor's, you know, non-action. And at the same stage where, you know, she called Daniel Cameron a sellout, she turns around and twerks for the crowd. You can be both of those things, you know, and yeah, I mean, Tupac is what comes to mind. And I know that in last week's episode, I said that I didn't think Meg deserved to be on the BET Lyricist of the Year. I really wanted to give her spot to Royce, and I stand by that. But I think maybe earlier than you, I was a fan of Meg. Like, I hear a lot of Bun B in her delivery. I hear a lot of Juicy J, you know, and the hits are not my favorite. I think Savage is a really cool record, but I mean, when I've listened to her, you know, encourage everyone, watch the LA Leakers freestyle to the Hit 'em Up beat. Meg came on the scene with substance and swagger, and I think we've all been impressed over the last 4 years to watch Cardi B use some of these moments to engage with candidates or to be political on IG. But Cardi B still can be hella silly. I mean, that's part of the reason that keeps people in the seats. I think Meg, and I don't mean to compare, but as we watch this evolution, Meg can be a little bit more forthright, and nothing says that more than this op-ed.
Mm-hmm. So now to the salacious stuff. What were you about to say?
Yeah, and I'm glad you held that back. But as we talk about probably one of the most meaningful weeks in hip hop since we started this podcast back in March, one more thing I think that is of note. Drake, T.I. on his new album implies a long-standing rumor, which I have to admit I didn't know about, but Meek Mill lyrics had suggested it, that Drake had been urinated on by an associate of Clifford Tip Harris.
Right.
What are your reactions, Reggie?
Well, so Meek, did tell that story. The first time I heard of it was when Meek released "Wanna Know."
Okay.
And that was in the middle of his beef with Drake. After Drake had two-pieced him, following up with back to back, and had gone in. Meek's song came like 2 weeks later or something like that, and was definitely anticlimactic given kind of the buildup. But that line is the one that I recall people scratching their heads and saying, "Yo, what?" And I do believe that T.I. Kind of tacitly confirmed it back then. He was asked about it and he just kind of laughed or chuckled or whatever, but didn't deny it. And so for him to confirm it now, I wonder why he did it. I'm always curious about the timing of these things, and it's suspect that it comes like right before he's about to drop an album. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people use Drake's name to generate heat because he is the biggest artist in music right now. And also the fact that his friend has passed away now. I don't know. I don't know that I would have invoked this now. Given the timing with both those things playing a factor. Also, you don't know what the context was. They could have been in the bathroom. The dude could have dribbling on his foot or whatever. Who knows? It's some sort of movie premiere for takers, and I don't know. I wash my hands of this, pun intended.
Yeah, it's not something that especially it didn't move me at all. I don't even know if Drake will dignify this with a response, and. Drake has worked with a lot of hip hop's elite, which I absolutely think T.I. is part of. And those two have history together of collaborating, but I don't know that they've necessarily had a strategic alliance in recent years. And I didn't know if this was like a cry for, not a cry, but hey, remember me, I'm gonna get in the media cycle. So yeah, I agree with everything that you said. And man, I thought between Suge, R. Kelly, and the end of Cameron's Killer Season movie that hip hop and urine were done for a while. But here we are.
Here we are. Yeah. Drip, drip. Yeah, exactly. So, some fantastic music came out this week. What a week it was for hip hop and music, man. For underground hip hop, I should say. So Black Thought releases Streams of Consciousness through Volume 3. This one, was produced entirely by Sean C. And I gotta say, no disrespect to Ninth, no disrespect to Salam Remy, two of my favorite producers, two of my favorite people in hip hop. Yo, man, this one I thought suited Thought the most, in terms of just melding with his style, and I thought there was some bangers on this one. I enjoyed it right out of the gate. But what was your thought?
Yeah, I did too. I mean, I agree with you too, and utmost respect to Ninth and Salam. These felt more like songs, they had fully formed choruses and things like that. I think that so much of Thought's career, especially standing on his own away from the roots, but also has been about just blistering bars. And my favorite, I really love the Roots evolution around game theory. It started a little bit before, but between game theory and Undone, they made really incredible records. And I know there's purists out there that far prefer the stuff in the 90s and early 2000s, but this reminded me of that. There's a music quality here, and there's a topicalness to the bars. Like yesterday, my song of the day that I texted you, pretty late at night was Nature of the Beast. And I encourage anyone to listen to that. I mean, it relates to the pandemic. It relates a lot to the powers that be. And it's not thought giving you, 144 bars of death, but it's him working with singers and working with collaborators and coming out with something, that I think will stand the test of time.
Yeah, Streams of Thought, Volume 3, Cain and Abel. It's got that song "Good Morning," which we had on the playlist, a few weeks ago with Pusha T and Killer Mike, which
And Swizz, yeah.
and Swizz sounds like just, I don't know, it sounds like riot music. It makes you want to just break things. And then the other feature, which I was not crazy about, was Stakem with Schoolboy Q. It sounded like, because their styles are so different. Q's got that kind of like unorthodox, slower flow, and
Yeah.
Thought is like aggressive and faster. It sounded like they tried to do a beat that would be somewhere in the middle for both of them, and it just
Yeah.
didn't play for either one to me. But
I agree
aside
with
from
you.
that, like I thought that most of the albums were really really strong.
I mean, Good Morning, you loved it. You put it on the playlist. I thought it was cool, but it wasn't like, the stuff that we got on Bandana. Believe it or not, my favorite features on this album, there's 3 songs that are made with Portugal the Man, which I got to admit, I hear a lot of music. I listen to a lot. I had no idea. Like, I'm thinking that's just somebody new. I didn't realize that that's the, Rebels Since 1966 band, that had hits.
Okay. Yeah.
And The Lost Artful Dodger, which I'm hearing, a lot about. So there's 3 songs, and those were my favorite. So this is a case where the high profile features weren't my go-to. And I completely agree with you. I think in theory, Schoolboy Q and Thought sounds interesting. I don't love that song. It takes a while for the music to build. There's some really important things that Dave Chappelle's saying. And I have a question I want to ask you about interludes as we talk about some other albums. But I'm so pleased with this. And it's Black Thought is just that dude, and 3 albums in 2 years of this caliber, give that man all his flowers.
Yeah, for sure. And so the other release, and I got a couple questions because it's interesting that these 2 released on the same day.
Yeah.
But Benny the Butcher, this dude, his album Burden of Proof,
Yeah.
produced entirely by Hit Boy, I believe. You sent me a very, very. I mean, I'm usually the superlative dude. Like,
You're the yearbook committee. Yeah.
You're usually trying to restrain me from like, yo, this is a great, but you sent me a text. Was your song of the day, and you said album of the year.
Yeah.
Burden of Proof by Benny the Butcher. So, okay, speak on this album.
Yo, man, Royce, don't kill me, man, because I've been on here for almost 11 months championing Royce, and I still will.
Yeah.
Because Royce continues to outdo himself. Benny, I was tepid on this album in paper. I didn't love the single with Wayne and Sean, like you did. And I told you I came around on it through multiple listens. I am not, on the committee of the Hit Boy fan club. I give him all his props, but I've never looked at him on that level of, A-list name brand producers. This album is the perfect marriage of beats and rhymes. And Benny, for as prolific as he is and has put out all of these dope projects, well before Tana Talk 3, which I think was a real, level up for him. This is an incredible body of work. And for as much as I love Derringer and Beat Butcher and the Griselda in-house producers, this was just such a dope, alternative look. And the way that it begins, I live in Philadelphia. My favorite thing about Meek Mill is his intros. I mean, he knows how to make it seem like a march to battle. And the title track, Burden of Proof, that was what I texted you. I was just like, man. So I cannot stop playing this album, and it is cemented right now as my album of the year.
Yeah, I mean, the title track is unbelievable, like incredibly strong start to the album. Where Would I Go? Featuring Rick Ross, like,
Yeah,
is just like
that beat.
phenomenal. I loved. I think even more so than you, Timeless, the Lil Wayne and Big Sean joint
Yeah.
too. But how do you think? How do you feel about that one? Like in the context of the album?
It fits really nicely in there. I think that it's one of the weaker beats on the album, honestly. And we didn't talk about it last week, but one of the things that Hit Boy has said since that came out, that beat was made with Watch the Throne. Like that was shopped to Jay and Kanye, and it's
Oh,
sat,
really?
for the
Interesting.
last 9+ years. So yeah, anyway, but man, that one, it's one of the things that I think is so interesting of this album. Well, first of all, too, thank God I made it. You loved the way that Benny ended Plugs I Met with. What was it, 5 to 50?
Yeah. Yeah.
It might be 50 to
15.
5, but
Yeah.
15. This is another case where Benny can rap from the heart. Hit Boy actually revealed in an interview that Benny cried in the studio, and he said the only other time he saw an artist cry, I believe, was Jay.
Wow.
And this song is a homage to his mother. It's an homage to the circumstances that he survived to make his dream in hip-hop happen. I don't love the chorus on it. It's a singing chorus, but it's that's another song that I encourage everyone to listen to. This is Benny at the top of his game, truly.
Yeah, man, I agree. This dude, he just keeps getting better and better and better. And we've talked about this. We've had it a couple times. This conversation about I don't know anyone who's had a stronger 12 months than this guy.
Yeah.
Black Dot though is one of those who would probably be a contender. And so I thought it was interesting and kind of cool that the two of them went head to head. I doubt it was by design, and they've had their own like collabo,
Yeah.
together. But these two are definitely, top of the hill right now, along with Royce. So
Benny has this line that I thought, as we talked about Pac earlier, he says, I'm the only rapper who would have made it in the Tupac era. And certainly, I mean, I never knew Pac. I was 12 years old when he passed away, but some of my close friends knew Pac pretty well. And I imagine Pac being a fan of Kendrick Lamar, and I imagine him, being a fan of J. Cole and a lot of those things. But I wholeheartedly love that bar, because I think that, from what Pac took to things, Benny's an artist who sounds so 2020, but really upholds the tenets of rap from the mid 90s. I mean, and you lived that. You were older than I was and lived through it differently. I mean, do you agree with that?
yeah, I mean, he just. I think all of Griselda does. I think that Conway, lives up to that statement just as much.
Yeah.
Gun too. But Benny is just like his progression, is just incredible. I remember you and I, we were going back and forth as to putting Supreme Blientele or
Tana Talk 3.
Tana Talk, right? And we opted to go with Supreme Blientele. But like I don't see any Griselda project stepping ahead of the Benny one this year for us, so far. Um, you know, so I can't say that he's the only one, but he's definitely one who could live it up to that era.
Yeah, and I got to give Hit Boy so many props. I mean,
Yeah,
he
I gotta
showed.
go back. I gotta go back because last week, 2 weeks ago, you weren't willing to give him Producer of the Year. You
Yeah.
said, we haven't even heard one of the projects yet, and
Yeah.
you weren't the Kings.
I was like, pump your brakes, Reggie. Yeah.
Yeah. Where
And
are you
here,
now? Where are you
I'm
now
like,
with that one?
I think it really comes down to three in 2020. And again, and I said this before, it's Alchemist, it's Royce on his own album and what he did for Eminem, and it's Hit Boy. And you know, Hit Boy, these beats stand out so much more than what he gave Nas. And you can have a whole other conversation of like, well, what's that about? Is that Nas's ear for beats? But Hit Boy showed so much versatility. Like I said, up until this point, I never looked at him as a household name producer. I always thought he was a star of the B class, not necessarily A class. No, Hit Boy has leveled the F up. And yeah, I would say that he's producer of the year. And shame on me, you know, once again for eating my words. But I'd rather say that now, having heard the album, and this is not a shot at you, but then to go off of speculation.
That was a shot.
Well, you made fun of my Betty Boop, you know. So yeah.
I came out blasting, you end up blasting.
Yeah.
I see how you go. Like, yeah, I see how you go.
Yeah.
You know, you said something about interludes. What do you want to talk about with interludes?
So it's dope. I mean, a lot of people are comparing Benny's album, like it has that rock sound. Somebody I saw on Twitter that got a lot of retweets said it was very Reasonable Doubt era beats. I'm not going that far, which is funny because as we talk about, you know, Black Thought and Benny, Sean C, you know, worked on Reasonable Doubt, co-produced Can't Knock the Hustle, which is, you know, epic. But this to me sounds a little bit more like Volume 3 Rock La Familia era, like that Just Blaze, that Bink. But Hit Boy he paid homage, but he didn't copy. You know, he doesn't do the Chipmunk Soul thing too much. He uses the same sample as I Get High, you know, the Styles P joint, which is also of that era. But he's got Pain in the Ass on here, I believe, you know, which heads know from the early J albums.
Yeah, for sure. And did he have D-Dot too? Because like he's got two. He's got Okay, I'm Reloaded. It's definitely like going back to the Reasonable Doubt. You know, it's a clear homage. And then they also had like a Mad Rapper skit.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if it was actually it was D-Dot, right? Who was a Mad Rapper?
D-Dot was a Mad Rapper, and somebody got punched for revealing that back in the day, but I think we're like 20 years safe on that.
Yeah.
But my question to you is, I mean, the interlude in hip hop.
225.
Ring ring, hey hey. Which is perfect segue. I mean, there's so many albums in hip hop that benefit from interludes. Wu-Tang, Gravediggers, De La Soul, Jay. On both Thought and Benny, I don't love the interludes. I just want the music. And both of these are lean back albums, so it's not. But as we have moved music into the cloud, or we can make our own playlists and all of that, do you think there should be a button that takes the interludes off songs, or am I tripping?
Well, you know, okay, so I agree with you that interludes get very annoying after the first couple of times, even the ones that are like super clever, you know.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that what they did was they moved them from the front to the back of the songs, right? So it used to be that you had to wait through the interlude and wait, you know, a minute or whatever it might be, and then they made them as separate tracks, and that was annoying because you had to skip skip or whatever. But putting them at the back of the tracks, like, you know, when the song is over, you just hit, you know, fast forward and get to the next song. So I don't mind it from that if it advances something, because you know, Good Kid, Mad City is not the album that it was without the interludes.
Yeah.
Even
Doggy Style.
It brings the entire story together, you know.
Word.
So I do think that there is a place for them in some, you know, in some instances. Yeah, so I'm not mad at interludes completely, but I do think that placement is key.
That's cool. Yeah, I don't love the interludes on either of these albums. I mean, I like the callback to, you know, Okay, I'm Reloaded. I do wonder now, like, I'm like, man, all of these beats, and I know we are past the point by and large. I know, you know, Jay did the All the Way Up remix with Fat Joe and Remy, but I'm like, when are we going to get Jay and Benny? And these beats, especially with the Hit Boy connection, are screaming for Jay. And man, I want to hear that.
We do need a Jay and Benny record for sure.
Man.
For sure. And now with the Rock Nation too, man, we gotta get that. We gotta get that.
Yeah, I really, really hope so, and I hope it's burden of proof. Like, I'm sure they'll come with their own thing, but I just am like, that 2005, you know, that retirement era to, you know, like 2010 when Jay would bless a remix like that, man, like, it would give, yeah.
It's not even that. He likes to drop in on the dude who is like the hottest of the moment, and not just like hot popular, but like spitter, right?
Yeah.
Like, so Kendrick on Don't Kill My Vibe, the remix, and you know, with Pusha T with Drug Dealers Anonymous, and with Drake on like several songs. Like
Yeah.
Dre likes to pop up and like, just remind people, yeah, this isn't LeBron, MJ. I can come back and lace them up anytime I want to. Just to remind y'all start talking crazy about the GOAT, who I am. You know what I
Right.
mean? And so like, and Benny is creeping up on that status.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's there. And I said on this podcast that I thought we would get, a Royce J collaboration this year, especially with what Royce was talking about and Rock Nation using Black Savage as an initiative for the NFL season last year. Man, I want to see that. I really want to see it. And I do believe in the case of Benny, it'll happen sooner than later.
Yeah, he did it with Jay Elect too.
Yeah.
Jay. So, okay, album of the year. So you're putting it above Royce, above Shea Noir,
And Apollo Brown.
above J and J, above Logic.
That's you.
I knew I was gonna elicit laughter from you on that. I just wanted to remind the crowd of just how like wrong, how much evil intent you have against Logic. It's crazy, dude. Like so much hate.
Nah, man, you drink too much Mountain Dew. You love Logic, and you were like Marshall, the Eminem.
Oh wow.
No, man, I see you coming out of Hot Topic at the mall.
But album of the year, you give it album of the year.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that said Benny deserved it last year with the plugs I met. There were people all over the AFH, Facebook page and on Twitter that really thought Tana Talk 3 was, up there in 18. This is Benny at the top of his game. And I know he's got, the crazy thing about Benny is we might get another album before year's end, another 30 minutes of music. But
all right, well, it's my turn to say pump your brakes a little bit.
Okay.
I'm gonna wait on album of the year. It's a dope album though. I really dig it. I like Nas more than you do. I wouldn't say it's album of the year. But we'll see. We'll see. There's some phenomenal stuff that's dropped just even in the last 2 months or so.
Oh, huge.
For me, Problem, Coffee and Kush, Volume 2, that one is up there for me. Like it is really, really up there. I liked Only for Dolphins more than you did.
Yeah, I love D Smoke, and you, I know, are still maybe haven't had a proper chance to sit with it.
Yeah. But there's some great stuff, and Living Off Experience. I know you love that Locks album too, but
that still might be my favorite song. I love the Black Thought again, Shea Noir and Apollo Brown, but the Benny and Westside Gun with the Locks on a Large Pro beat, man, that that is just not left rotation for me.
Yeah, well, no shame plug. All these songs, most of the music we discuss is on our playlist on Spotify, just under Ambrosia for Heads. So definitely check that out. And if you like what you hear, subscribe. Subscribe to YouTube, our channel, if you like the podcast. But more new music. What else caught your ear this week?
Well, on a big note, you had Nas and Joey Badass coming together on a record called Keep It Moving, which is anchored by Static Selector. He put the record out, and it also has, the guitarist Gary Clark Jr. on it. I'm going to level with you. Nas definitely commanded attention in Midsummer with his album. This one didn't really stick to my ribs, but I also will admit that, since the early days of Pro Era, you're a far bigger Joey Badass fan than I am.
Yeah, I haven't heard the track. I got to go back and listen to it. I'm a huge Joey Badass fan. I love his packet, the light that he released this summer. The Roy Ayers joint. I thought it was some of the best music he's put out in a while. So I'll go check that out. Gary Clark Jr. I'm a fan of him more philosophically than musically. I like the fact that he's a modern Black artist playing blues music. But the music hasn't ever really kind of been my favorite. So, but I'll check it out. I'll check that out for sure.
New Serial Killers album, that's Be Real, Exhibit, and Demrick. They seem to drop every Halloween, put out something new. This one, they've got Busta Rhymes, DJ Quick, Snoop Dogg on it. I started playing that. It was cool. I went right back to Benny and thought those albums have really been huge for me. Pete Rock has announced Peach Instrumentals 3 coming in December. he put out his first single from it called Say It Again. And what's dope about this one is, Pete's not sampling. Instead, he's assembled a live band of musicians, including a lot of people that hip hop heads know, like Mono Neon, who was Prince's bassist, I believe, Marcus Machado, and what's my man, Daru Jones, the drummer, and some other folks, Christian McBride out of Philly. So yeah, look out for that, because we watched Primo form a live band, the Batter Band. This is Pete Rock's, and man, Say It Again just still sounds like it came from the basement, Pete's basement. So
yeah, I saw Pete. He released Return of the SP 1200 last year, which was one of my favorite albums of the year. I think it was the only instrumental album we've ever put the entire time we worked together on an AFH, end of the year list. And I saw him play with that band live. Was it Sony Music Hall? No, it wasn't Sony. I saw him. Maybe it was Sony Music Hall. I saw him play live with that band, and it was unbelievable. And I talked to him afterwards because in an interview I did with him back with the Don't Smoke Rock days, I asked him what his, if he could put together his dream band, dead or alive, and he had I think he had James Brown, Barry White. Who else did he have? He had
somebody from Kool and the Gang or somebody.
Maybe. But he lists that. So it's cool to see him now working with bands and becoming that Quincy Jones kind of like orchestrator producer instead of just chopping samples. So pretty dope.
Yeah, and I got to help Pete on his bio with this, and what's dope is some of these tracks are based on beats that Pete has never released because of sample issues, where he could, get these talented musicians to play something and basically do it legit. So it's not just like, some of them they jammed out from scratch, but some of these are based on beats that Pete always wanted to give the world, but wasn't in a position to. So that, be on the look for that. Stevie Wonder put out 2 songs this week, and one of them has Busta Rhymes, Rhapsody, Corday, formerly, YBN Corday, and Chica, who was the artist that I'm most excited about on this year's XXL freshman list. And they got a joint called Can't Put It in the Hands of Fate, which is, both of the songs that Stevie put out are, very topical, very resonant for election season, for a lot of what's, going on. I would say in the Black community, but that joint was really cool. I love it. You mentioned Quincy Jones a minute ago. I love it when the icons make good music with some of hip hop's best and brightest. And this one's a generation bridger too.
Yeah, for sure. So on that note, what is your song of the week?
Damn, I'm gonna go with Burden of Proof. I'm gonna go the opener from Benny's album. He said last year was about Brandon, this year is about expanding, and it's one of my favorite bars of the year.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Where Would I Go? Song number 2 with Rick Ross. That 1-2 punch of those first 2 songs just sets the whole album off, man. Definitely strong, for sure.
Definitely, man. Well, what a great week for music. We got more coming up next week. Ty Dolla $ign. We got Busta Rhymes with his first album in over a decade coming up at the end of the month. And I think we got some guests coming up on the show too.
Yeah. Looking forward to that, for sure.
Likewise, man.
Yeah. All right, man.
Word. Yo, you have a good week. All right.
All right, later.